Welcome everyone to our Temple of Light service. This is our 8th session and I look forward to our time. I'm Steve Ventola here in Atlanta, Georgia. And let's remember to keep our microphones muted. If you're on your Zoom screen, it's our mute button is our lower left-hand corner. If you're on your phone, you can press *6 to mute and unmute yourselves. Okay, let's begin by introducing ourselves from where we are on the locations on our planet, beginning in Europe and South Africa.
Oh, hello, it's Brendan McMahon here in Poole, Dorset in England. Good to be with you all.
Hi, Brendan.
Hi, Steve. This is Davina calling in from London, England.
Hi, Davina.
Hi.
And it's Louise Brumberg in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Hi, Louise.
And Arno and Mia and Laura from Johannesburg, South Africa.
Okay, hi, Johannesburg. And remember to mute your line after you introduce yourselves. Okay, so we'll begin with our Eastern time zone.
Carol Smith from Atlanta.
Hi, Carol.
This is Lucille Gay from Atlanta. Hi, Lucille.
Hi, Millie. Hi, Lucille.
Hi.
Linda and Bill Bayan in Atlanta.
Hi, Linda and Bill.
Robert and Terry in Atlanta.
Hi, neighbors. Okay. Central time zone.
Alan and Myra from Central Texas, South Boston. Hello, everybody.
Hi, Alan and Myra. Anybody else in Central? Okay, we'll move over to Mountain time zone.
This is Luann Summers in Arizona.
Hi, Luann.
And Suzanne in Colorado. Good morning, everyone.
Hi, Suzanne. Hi, Debbie and Tom.
Hi.
Shirley Mayon in Fort Collins, Colorado. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Shirley.
Mary Janik in Denver.
Hi, Mary. And who was that?
Robert.
Delano, Loveland, Colorado.
Hey there. There you are, Barbara. Okay. And our Western time zone?
This is Jim
Or
Crowner,
Pacific? Yeah.
just outside of Yelm, Washington.
Hi, Jim.
Or Flem, Washington, depending on where you're from.
Right.
And John and Pamela are here from Lake Elsinore.
Hi, John and Pam.
Gloria Rubin, Desert Hot Springs, California.
Hi, Gloria.
And hello from Norwalk, California. Stuart Berger here.
Hi, Stuart.
Everyone, it's Gary from Saturna Island, British Columbia.
Hi, Gary.
Alice Penwell in Las Vegas, Nevada.
And your name is again?
Alice.
Alice.
Alice
Hi,
Penwell.
Alice.
Laura Fisher from British Columbia, up in the mountains. Hi,
Hi,
everyone.
Laura. Hi there.
David here in BC.
Hey, David.
And also in BC.
Hi, Ann. Okay. And anyone west of Pacific time zone?
I guess that would be me, Marcia in Seoul, and it's so great to see all of you.
Marcia, great to have you. Yes. Good morning there, right?
Definitely morning, no sun yet.
Okay, wonderful. Anyone else who hasn't signed in yet? John, you just, okay. Anyone else who hasn't signed in yet? Introduce themselves.
Hi, this is Chuck and Angela in Cumming, Georgia.
Hey, Chuck, Angela. Okay, Let's begin our time, and Anne and David will be leading our time, and Anne will begin. Anne?
Greetings, everyone. Am I adequately loud?
I think it could be a little louder, Anne.
Okay. All right. Is that better? I'm going to assume that it's okay. Start waving your hands. Oh, good. I just saw a thumbs up. That's good. Really good to hear all your check-ins from all over the world. It's amazing how we can communicate these days. This is a great blessing that we have, especially in these days of modified communication, should we say, by virtue of the virus that keeps us at home, and we are able to communicate with this technology. I'm very thankful for it. So this is, as Steve mentioned, the 8th of the Temple of Light service series. And we're cognizant of that number 8, and that it's a fire cycle, the second fire cycle. And we are culminating something in a way, and at the cusp of a new cycle to begin. And to do that cycle that we are culminating right now, some justice, I thought it would be useful to refer back to our last service, since it's a whole month since we were together, which was offered by Eugen and Marcia. I felt that there were some essences that came forth through their presentations that would serve us very well to review and to expand and to meditate on as we're together. So I'm going to read portions of both their sections that they presented with a little paraphrasing, so they won't be exact quotes in some cases, and we'll move along with that. Marcia began her portion by saying, how did Martin consistently live in heaven in the pressures and challenges that he experienced? He consistently maintained true polarity and also a rich reservoir of pneumoplasm. Today, I'm drawn to focus on pneumoplasm, and particularly the unique factors in generating and sustaining pneumoplasm now in this intensifying world cycle. I want to speak a little about generating capstone pneumoplasm as individuals, especially in this intensifying time. The Lord needs leaders who can bring heaven's direction and control into these crises. One way to do that is to sustain the experience of well-being amidst all that's happening. Recently, 3 ways have proven helpful to me that I would like to share. The first step is deep surrender and letting go in absolute trust of the Lord. Challenges may bring fear of losing what is really precious to us, or distrust when we can't see the way through. So I found there's a continual renewing and expanding of trust required. There's so much that stirs us to follow the impulses of the mind and not heaven. Archetypal patterns may focus through circumstances, patterns of injustice, betrayal, waves of fear or loss. The second way that I would mention is a very deliberate practice of expressing only the truth of love and following heaven's impulse. The third way to sustain well-being is to tune in to the ascending cycle, what heaven is bringing to be born through what is descending, falling apart. Because that's what shows up in form at the material level. What's falling apart dominates the scene. But whenever there is a descending cycle, there is also an ascending cycle. What is the leadership that is needed now? The leadership needed now relates to the regeneration of capstone pneumoplasm. This is done collectively and individually. Those who generate capstone pneumoplasm provide the essential link for heaven to guide us into the ascending cycle. Higher perspective brings us greater wisdom so that our actions are in attunement with the ascending cycle, even when handling what is descending. What is really happening through this is that we are ascending, and that carries more causative weight than all that swirling in the descending cycle. It is a significant transformative influence because we are providing an updraft and an essential link for the restoration of man to his true state. We are tuned in to the ascending cycle. We are bringing the ascending cycle. We are part of the ascending cycle because we are ascending. One way to describe this is a scene from a novel by Doris Lessing. In her novel, Shikasta, there's a scene where giants, those in true stature, gather in a generating chamber to establish their cosmic lock with a star that is their centering point. Once that contact is made, they transmit cosmic influences that nourish and guide their whole planet. So when we gather in our different groupings, Temple of Light, Tone of Life, I think of this. We are giants gathering in our generating chamber to make the cosmic lock that guides and nourishes all the other levels of consciousness. Spiritual government. It's not telling others what to do, but it's providing a capstone of vision, of pneumoplasm and perspective that invites the whole pyramid of human consciousness to come together in heaven's design. And here I'd just like to interject a quote from John chapter 12, verse 32. And if I be lifted up from the earth, will draw all men unto me. We're not talking about the generation of life substance, which many on the earth are generating in their living, but we're talking about a specific quality of pneumoplasm, which has been referred to as capstone pneumoplasm. Here's a visual, a lovely little jade pyramid. And we know if this represents the entire body of mankind, there's lots of generation going on throughout the whole part of the lower parts of the pyramid. But we know that as we ascend, as we let go, often of opinions, thoughts that we have about the way things are going, when we release those, we rise and we have an experience of going closer to the apex of the pyramid. And in that area is a very intensified experience happening, which we have the opportunity of participating in. When I was thinking about all of us gathering this morning for me, I was thinking about the absolute joy of knowing that I was actually going to be spending time with people who have an internal experience, which is similar to mine and similar to those who are gathered here. It's a very intimate experience that we know because of our relationship with the Lord, and we know it with one another. This is a privilege to be in the company of people who actually are having inside, internally, a precious experience with the Lord, with what's sacred, with what's holy, and that it is continuing throughout their living and now brought together where we are. Moving on to Eugen. Eugen began by quoting Martin. We haven't, of course, come to the point where the shattering in the worldwide sense is complete. In one sense, it has only just begun. Of course, there is an ultimate point where the shattering occurs very rapidly, even in our eyes. Let us be found centered where we belong by then. And then Eugen went on. I believe such are the times that we are in. An ultimate point of more rapid shattering, an ultimate harvest time, a time when what has been sown through all the ages is reaped, a time of balancing the books where the accounts are finally closed. A harvest time, which on the other hand, is also a birth time. A new cycle is able to be born. A line from a poem that Eugen read. As the ancient clock strikes 12 in the hour, all is remembered, all is seen. These are Eugen's words, his poem. The ancient clock striking 12 in the hour is describing a point where all that is sown is reaped. This is speaking of a point towards which we are accelerating right now, a point at which what has been sown is reaped, but reaped increasingly at maximum velocity. I don't think we're at the point of maximum velocity yet, but I think we are increasingly entering such a time. I want to speak about our function and leadership in such times of harvest, which is also of birth. I think as we approach the shattering point that Martin was speaking about, that the intensity will continue to build even more than has been present. There will be a surfacing of all the things in the subconscious of man that have not been cleansed, surfacing in order to be cleansed. Could a new heaven and a new earth come without all of the old being cleansed? At the bottom of the ocean of human memory is the memory of the loss of home, of our home, of the motherland, plus all the events of that loss, of such grief and shattering and fear. These memories and energies of loss will surface too, and are in the process of surfacing. But more importantly is what is surfacing from beneath the memories of loss, which is the reality of home and the return of home. And that's what we are really looking at. While we may be looking at cleansing and harvesting of all sowing, we are really looking at the return of home and light. Marcia spoke of this time being a time of choosing under increasing pressure and at times choosing under maximum pressure. Who will we be? What will we love? Shall we choose God, or shall we choose what we fear we might lose if we chose God? We are being called to let all go, fears, preferences, attachments, habits, and come increasingly into the present moment of complete alertness to choose what we have always known to be the one true thing, the Spirit of God. Marcia spoke about giants in the generating chamber, coming into the place of attunement together, and together making a cosmic lock with the star, which was the vibrational source for their planet. They made that cosmic lock. In this time of harvest and new birth, under maximum pressure, the most important thing will be that cosmic lock, not only as individuals, but us together. This is the leadership, the capstone leadership that Marcia was speaking of. Those who are most conscious on earth being able together to make that cosmic lock and thus tune in to the moment by moment navigation that comes through that lock. That brings both the guidance and the pulsations of energies to be released into this planet together, which will guide others too, who in their own way will tune in as the pressures increase. We are present together, able to provide this cosmic lock to Source. Through that lock will come both the guidance as well as the energies needed for those who tune in. There's another word for that energy, and that is the word. The word needed in this time of harvest and birth, accurate exactly in the pulsations of this time. May we assist in the provision of guidance because we are tuned in and locked in place together. A lot of people will not make it, but may there be a few, some who make it and provide the beginning of the new. May we truly establish this lock with the Lord of Lords together. And I pulled a line from Eugen's poem, which I enjoyed. For created we the laws of the wind, and by these laws shall we live. The value of capstone pneumoplasm present on the earth right now cannot be minimized. There is an opportunity that we have had given to us by the demonstration and expression of an expression from heaven that we actually came into contact with and participated in. We were among those who discovered what capstone pneumoplasm was, and we actually participated in generating it. And we generated it time and time again, for instance, in services of Martin, but in all gatherings that we participated in over the years. We can see that on a world scale, people love to gather. And in fact, now that restrictions from the COVID threat are being lifted, the first thing people want to do is gather. And in fact, they want to gather in large venues, you know, football stadiums, baseball stadiums, concerts, etc. Even just in restaurants so they can eat with other people. We do understand the necessity for a collective experience. That is understood by many, many people. They're drawn to it. But those who are drawn to participate in a chamber of generating pneumoplasm that is of the capstone quality, this is special. Now, you might think, oh, does that mean it's exclusive? Are those on the top better than those below? Well, no. We're just providing a particular function at this time. And in an ideal situation, the entire body of mankind would be the capstone. There's plenty below the body of mankind to steward and to bring forth. But right now, we're focusing on what it is that we come to do together and recognize the specialness of that opportunity. I'm so glad that we here gathered understand that, because we have that experience ourselves as individuals. We know ourselves a relationship with the divine, and we can actually share that with one another. It's not talking about it. It's not talking about something in theory, the mechanics, etc. That's very tempting to talk about the mechanics, but that's actually not participating in what is happening, which we feel is the call right now in our collective gatherings, to actually be performing a function of that chamber, that generating chamber. And as that lock, that cosmic lock with the Lord of Lords is held in place, there's a particular stability that is offered into the whole planet, sort of like a grounding wire. It's present. And at the same time, it performs as a magnet. It is actually drawing substance, drawing people, attracting. When we ourselves have that experience together, we actually have the very earth of our worlds drawn into this sacred space that we know. And what is that? To me, that is actually beginning to understand what home is. That is what the home is. It's what is emerging and drawn to us as we invite it, as we provide that magnet. And this is on a larger scale what is being offered, that the home, the memory of home that exists, is being drawn up. Recently, it was pointed out that 1 year of the Lord was equal to 1,000 years of humans. And I think we can understand that the memory of home, although it might feel very far away from us in our smaller identities, in our incarnations now, it actually is something that's within our awareness. Not only do we have the opportunity and we have the ability to generate capstone pneumoplasm, we also know the story. We know the story that is what man is living through. And that is very special knowledge and needs to be treated as something worth preserving. So I appreciated what Eugen and Marcia brought up. I thought it was worth going back over because we do often need to send our reminders to ourselves, as Marcia was indicating in her 3 points. It does get kind of chaotic sometimes, and it really is necessary in the moment to remind ourselves about trust, about spiritual expression. We need to be capable in this way and do what is our job here in the capstone function. It's a function. It's required. It's cosmic. It has to do with a lot more than just this planet, and participate together in remembering home. So I'd like to now turn it over to my partner, David, who is going to carry this on for us.
I trust I can be heard. Okay. So good to be among friends. To have a very deep sense of being at home together here. If we were together physically, sharing this hour and a half or so, I'm sure that we would quite palpably have that feeling of being together with friends. If we spent a day or two together, or 3 or 4 in a council of some sort, in a generating chamber, designed and drawn together to let an intensification of the currents of spirit be focused and released. We would know, as we have experienced in the past, such a powerful sense of intimate angelic friendship. That all the history that we may have shared together, and all the history of the predicaments and challenges and pressures of our own lives would evaporate in the richness of the heaven of that generating chamber. Not that they couldn't be called to mind, but they would not be the governing influence, but would be seen as something drawn to consciousness, specifically through which the radiation that is known in that generating chamber could be released through this particular contact point, and offer the opportunity for release and transformation in the wider world for which we are responsible and for which we gather. One might ask, well, what is this generating chamber? We know it. We're in it right now. In fact, I suspect for most of us, if not all of us, that we actually never leave it. It's a constant, conscious place and space. And having learned something of the language and the atmosphere, the experience of the reality of heaven, we know that we have given it certain terms, certain words are used to describe this indescribable wonder, which at one point in our life we couldn't hardly describe at all. But we were irresistibly drawn to that focus at the capstone, drawn into the generating chamber to participate in what is required to let something happen that we ourselves did not originate as human beings, but to let something happen that we became aware of and agreed was the most important thing in this intensifying world cycle that we're in. We've called that generating chamber the vibrational arc. Which maybe at previous phases of our life we felt we could enter into and leave, but no more. There is no leaving the ark. It's also been called the secret place of the Most High. Yoronda, in a very beautiful meditation, which is hardly remembered in these days, but I suggest we should share it sometime, some point, called it the central shrine of the whole. Connected with the whole through this cosmic lock with the Lord of Lords, which of course doesn't just establish us in communion with one being, although it does that, but it establishes us in connection with all divine being. All the Lords, all the God beings who are responsible for this seven-dimensional world. And all that's above and around that. And so we could say that this particular gathering in the Temple of Light, what is that? That is also another term for this generating chamber, where we gather to let a particular quality of generation of new refined substance occur that is necessary for this moment. Connected with all that has already been accumulated and gathered into this central shrine. To meet the needs of the moment in this world, the earth. Providing the pneumoplasm within this particular shrine gathering. Connected to the central shrine through the highest ranges of pneumoplasm and the highest point of connection that is actually available to us in our current state of consciousness, all of us together. That highest connecting point between heaven and earth. That highest point for us as individuals and together here now could be said to be the most high that is possible in this moment as we gather. And yet we recognize that it's not the most high yet. Not as high as what will be in days and generations to come. But this is what we have, and this is so beautiful and wonderful to acknowledge. That we gather to let something occur. We're at a point in these cycles of regeneration on Earth. Some of us, where we can let something occur that it is not just a movement through the cycles of remembering that were described as radiation, response, attraction. Last night in a service from Korea, Eugen used the term, hear me, respect me, love me. Radiation, response, attraction. Hear me, respect me, love me. Moving into union, which is be me. Be me. Be one with me. We're in a place in our movement together that is emphasizing be me. And if we're beers in that sense, there's something to be done. That only those who be me know how to do. And the very first step in that I experience is that we know how to let something happen. What is that something? It's happening now. Maybe we really can't describe it all that well, but we do have some terms that are heavenly terms, and we call that letting of something happen, spiritual expression. Do you, as I do, feel that this is happening now? It's not something to come in the future, but it's happening now, that spirit is in expression, and it is immediately having results, its effects in the world of form, the form of flesh, the form of consciousness, the form of feeling currents, the form of communion with all life everywhere on this planet. You may have experienced, as I did, dramatically through August and September, leading up to this point now, an annual cycle that culminates in water, a particular focus of the spirit of truth leading into an intensified experience of the fire of love. And in that annual movement, a particular contraction happening, correlated with birth pressure gathering. And for us, I suggest there's absolutely no stopping it and no desire to stop it. In fact, it suggests let go of resistance. Let go to the pressure pattern. Let go to the contraction cycle that is bringing things in a contracted way to focus in the generating chamber for a reason. And that letting go has been called repentance. I let go of this and I let go of that and I let go too. This greater immensity of current that is calling for something to be born. And it's natural then, as angels living in these human facilities, feeling and experiencing this movement of the creative process to sanctify the sons and daughters, 7 sons and the 3 daughters. Our whole body temple being a generating chamber with the 7 seals and the central nervous system and the formations in the brain, the eyes, through the hands, the heart, the whole circulatory system, all of it very specifically designed to be a generating chamber in which the pneumoplasm that is needed for the particular cycle that we may be in as we are incarnate here in human flesh, the ark made flesh, to generate the required pneumoplasm for each phase of the cycle that we're in. We might imagine a day where the restoration to wholeness has been completed and the oneness of heaven and earth, the oneness of God and man, the Lord and his angels incarnate on earth has been established. And at that point, there will still be the need for a generating chamber that is absolutely available to the Lord of the body temple, to the Lord of the temple of light, the Lord of Lords, in order to generate the required pneumoplasm, we call it now. Maybe by that time we'll have another word for it, a vibrational word that is applicable to that state of being. But we have wonderful words now that we can use together in this work of generation. And when such a time comes, the restoration of the oneness of heaven and earth, God and man, woman has occurred, there will still be the need to generate the kinds and qualities of pneumoplasm that are necessary for the ongoing creation of what is required in and on the earth, and as it relates to the earth's right relationship with the other planets and the sun, and the movement of that whole, that central shrine through the cosmic cycles. So sanctification, purification. I experienced those processes through an intensification of them through August, September, through this month in particular as well. And what was originally felt as pressure through the contraction phase, and when it was first beginning to become noticeable in this annual cycle, with its pressures at this point, particularly I would say after Eugen and Marcia spoke and brought something to focus, and us with them, in that cosmic lock, with the focus point for all of it. But after that last gathering we had, and many other kinds of gatherings before and after it, which all are part of this generating chamber, aspects of it, this one generating chamber. The patterns of pressure that were felt became translated in my consciousness more as the wonder of the intensification of the movement of the spirit that was now able to be released, to give birth to something. That had been in the womb through the whole of this annual cycle. We were all carrying it. And these phases naturally have to be moved with if there is going to be a birth. And with that awareness of the intensification that was present and the glory of it, as is always present when a child is coming forth and is released into the world, into a new womb for growth and development, that it too might be useful as an aspect of the generating chamber. Release. And that release is a much more vivid consciousness of the radiation. Moving out in every direction multidimensionally. I experience that. That's why I'm speaking about it. I think it's significant and important for us. This phase now that we can feel is just beginning to move out again into that expansion aspect of the creative cycle, where by reason of the expansion, different kinds and qualities of generation occur. That are contained within the vibrational arc. And can feel that in the movement of those cycles, it comes again to a point where something once more is conceived in the spiritual womb and carried to its full term in another cycle of, or another phase of the movement that we once again experience called contraction. And a certain kind of discomfort that may be present in that phase. And with the purification of everything that has to occur, the transformation that everything that has to occur in the consciousness of mankind, there may be some unnatural pressures that come along in the cycle, but they have to be met with assurance and understanding of what's really going on. And we know that there is always in the birthing that tissue, that flesh, which returns to the earth. It's no longer needed in the body. So as these rhythms of the creative process proceed in individual lives, and in what we share together in an increasingly unified sense. So the various parts of the one body come together as a working operational whole. Not there yet, but we do have this much, which indicates that there is a functioning conscious mind, an operational heart, feeling realm, and a living generating mechanism for finer essential substance. And I don't, and I assume you don't, identify myself with that generating chamber as though I am that. I am the one who knows what it is that needs to be generated and how it needs to be handled and how the creative cycle moves. And so increasingly through this process that we go through, from contraction to purification to expansion to greater generation, there's an ease with what's going on and an understanding, and we don't identify, I don't identify with the processes that are working out in the body temple, but with the Lord of the body temple. One might ask, why do we do this? Why do we go through this? Why do we pay attention to it? What's the purpose? And touched on that. And I think we'll probably together in days to come in our various gatherings touch on it, but more than that, experience it, enter into it, expand it. And describe it as home. Let there be a home for the Lord of Lords on earth. You may remember that in the story of Noah's Ark, it was described as having 3 particular levels. It could be described as the ark of preservation, that first level. The ark of restoration, that second level. The ark of radiation, let love radiate. Spiritual expression, the third level. What's the fourth? It was described in that great ark as a window finished above. This is the open window. This is the fourth level. This is the heart, the pure heart. This is where the sea of glass, the transparency appears. What was shadowed and opaque, painted over, is now becoming transparent. And in that state, we in this generating chamber have a very clear consciousness of the Lord of Lords. Of our fellow angels who are incarnate with us in expression in human form, in action with us in the act of generating refined substance. And also of those beings in the invisible, what has been invisible, but now because of the transparency we begin to see the many with whom we co-create. And so the real purpose for this work at this time is to remember through each of these steps. And so this morning, together, we are remembering something. And in our remembering, we're inviting all those who have open hearts in this direction to remember our home among the stars. That home which was separated almost 300,000 years ago, heaven and earth, to such an extent that the reality of the Lord of Lords and those lords over whom he is Lord and all the heavenly host of which we are a part on earth, we now remember together, was completely forgotten. Just a little bit of memory remained. And here we are now, having been led through the first, the second, and the third, all together now beginning to be unified, and we have present with us an awareness of the window finished above, the transparent veil, we could call it. Not totally transparent for me or you yet, but something's coming through that wasn't before. Here's, I found these few words from Grace Van Dusen from 1999. She said, "The veil, in my estimation, has become very thin. We are working with masters on all planes. They have been on earth all the way through history. If that wasn't so, the master could not have come to initiate what he initiated." A very specific movement through these days of creation, leading us from the first to the second to the third, and now could say at the borderland of the fourth. The transparency occurring. The window not quite finished above, but we at least know there is a window and we see something of what's coming through. And at this point today, I'll leave you with what I think is what's coming through. More particularly for us and the remembering that we would allow to be released into the consciousness of mankind. We remind our own human consciousness and the consciousness of mankind that this whole holy earth belongs to the Lord. And the wholeness of it is the heaven and the earth reunited. The man and the woman reunited. The invisible and the visible. So that this home is a whole and holy home that belongs to him and his angels and does not belong to the rebellious patterns of fallen man. I will finish with Just a few words from you, Rhonda. Are you aware of his presence now? Or at the very least of the spirit of his presence, because it is your spirit. How vividly aware are you of his presence here in this generating chamber, the temple of light, the secret place, place of angels, the capstone that we refer to is actually the body of his priesthood. How vividly aware are you of the privilege and the responsibility of helping to prepare this part of his home for him? So that he, in coming here, feels at home. Here, and also with you, and you with him. If he were to come and stand among us tonight, this morning, in a manner that you might see him as he is, do you think that you would be ready to say, Lord, your home is prepared. We welcome you. And we find total joy and complete peace in your coming and in our being together. These things, of course, we don't share openly and speak about them in our day-to-day life within the fields of responsibility that we have in the world, which are all very important means for the generation of pneumoplasm, because we carry our generating chamber everywhere we go. But here in this holy place, we can speak of these things. And I think more importantly in the days to come, not just speak about them, but to be in that place because of the window finished above, where those two words are in action. Be me. And those who be me, let something happen. It is necessary and specific to this moment. Just as we've been doing this morning. So what a wonderful thing to be together, exploring more deeply some of these things. But more, letting it be. What a joy to be amongst friends. And so, friends, this chamber is open. And you're free to come up and stand before the altar and say something that is essential to the generation of the fine substance that confirms this connecting link between heaven and earth in a way that's natural for you, even as I've presented it in a way that's natural for me. It will be different. So, thank you.
The words, and he shall send his angels, lest thy trip or stub thy toe or whatever may come into the path. We are those angels, no longer acted upon so much as the one sent to minister. And that is clear in my own consciousness in these times. And I find that there are needs that I can assist with to ease the way for those in my world. I very much appreciate these considerations and feel the coming forth of new perspective, new forms in thinking. And with transformation, there is the excitement of new forms for which we have maybe a vague sensing, but really no imagination to encompass until we let them manifest. So what a precious time altogether, always.
Ann and David, I can't express enough the appreciation for the reminders that you provided this morning. There's been times in the past, I may not be the only one that felt this, but I wondered that given the knowledge and the consciousness that was so preciously given to me, what my role was. What did I do with that? You know, was I going to properly use that knowledge to make a difference that needed to happen in the restoration? And at times I couldn't really find an easy answer to that, but you've helped provide the answer in a very clear way. It's futile to speculate on what may happen in this transition out of the human nature world into the new heaven. Certain things seem fairly obvious. One is the dissolution of the human nature world and the patterns that have been created. But what emerges from that is more difficult to imagine. What does seem clear to me, or seem rational anyway, is that if humanity is going to participate in that new heaven, it's not going to be just those of us on this call. If that's the case, it's going to be a fairly short-lived participation in the new heaven. That speaks to the role, Ann, that you're speaking of the generation of capstone pneumoplasm and the impact through its generation that could occur in the world. And I just am very aware of a positive thing, and I'm sure many of you have seen this too, throughout my relatively long lifetime. The general attitude of human nature was to consider that everything's okay. Everything's getting better, we're evolving upward, technology is getting better, and we everything's fine. And I think Martin had mentioned in the past that it's difficult for people who have that comfort in the material world to awaken. I'm not sure that you've all seen this, but I'll bet you have. There's an incredible amount of openness and recognition that the human nature world isn't working. And you see it in these job changes where people are abandoning careers or questioning what they're doing in their life, and they see that things are disintegrating. How could you not see it? Well, in a positive sense, that seems to provide what you had mentioned, David, is an opening, more open hearts to the impact of the pneumoplasm that we may create. So that's the only thing I would just express an appreciation for, as a reminder of who knows what the impact of that'll be, or what form it'll take. But what else is there to do but to generate this in our living, share it as we can, but understand that the impact of it could be very invisible to us, and methodology could work, but the power is unimaginable. So thank you so much.
It's so true that we feel the power of heaven as we spend this time together. And I wanted to thank you both, Ann and David, for this beautiful time. And your emphasis on the generation of the finer levels of spiritual substance, because this is the only way by which there is the experience of resurrection in the body of mankind. It's clear, it's the only way. There is the saying that a rising tide lifts all boats. It is the rising of this finer substance of heaven that extends an invitation to the world to rise up, to come up hither. And it's nothing airy-fairy, it's very tangible. It's simply the awareness of our own consciousness of being in heaven, our heavenly identity. I am. And in knowing this, then we extend an invitation to our world to come home. That's the invitation. Welcome home, because I'm having this experience of being home. And so I can extend this to others. And so I appreciate this wonderful time that we've spent together, seeing what we are doing together. We are each extending an invitation to our world to come home, but how much more meaningful it is when there's a collective body of individuals that are doing this together. And how long has it been since a collective body of individuals were in position to do this? So thank you again for this lovely time together.
And I really appreciated you bringing up the service that Marcia and Eugen gave last week. I actually put a reminder in my phone that says Capstone Leadership. It goes off twice a day because I need the reminder. Last week was a very intense week for me. I feel like I poked the dragon. And I was a little surprised that that had happened, because I was still being me, and what used to be accepted was all of a sudden turned and not looked at as very good. So I spent last weekend doing a lot of internal meditation, looking at what is this teaching me? What do I own? What part of this, let's get the airy-fairiness out, right? Let's ground this. Am I really in the capstone, or am I just thinking that I want to be in the capstone? Or why am I chosen to be in the capstone? I mean, all these things, right? So I was blessed enough to go back to a previous service that on this circuit that John gave, called Cast Out the Accuser, or the accuser be cast out, something like that. Well, oh man, it was like, bing. So I kind of meld those two together about not placing blame, not being disappointed in myself, because I know what I'm offering, and I know I'm bringing the pressure. I know it. I am literally in a tornado. And so how do you stay still in a tornado? And you're asking other people to rise with you to stay still in that tornado. And I do have a coworker I can talk about, and I actually use the phrase, do you think the passing away was going to go quietly? And he looked at me and went, you're right. So I said, well, you just got to do what's right. That's it. You can't worry about the tantrums and the, attacks, if you will. You know your integrity, you know what you're doing. Don't give in to it. And he really appreciates hearing that. So I appreciate that I have such a community where we can have these types of conversations every Sunday, every other Sunday, whatever it turns out to be, to tap into, to remind me to really, to be in the world and not of it. Well, what does that mean? Again, it's not an airy-fairy thing to me. It's very specific, very deliberate. And you're right, a lot of things I've heard in the past before are now having different meanings to me and different levels of understanding. And I am longing and thirsty for all of this. So this is, in a selfish way, a very, very wonderful thing for me personally, but I know it's bigger than me. And cast out the accuser. Michael and his angels will fight the dragon. And the dragon's going to thrash around. Okay, so while the dragon is thrashing around, am I in the capstone locked with the one that is? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. You kind of get pushed around. I kind of get pushed around. But the feeling of that pushing around doesn't last as long as it used to. And sometimes even when I'm driving home, it's, let's just offer a blessing to what happened. And sometimes it's, I failed. I'm supposed to know better. I should, I know all these things. Why is it bothering me? That's just ego. That's just Lucifer getting in the way of love, God's unconditional love for all of us, for everyone on the planet, whether they're conscious of it or not. God unconditionally loves them. So I so appreciate these times and the opportunity to tap into previous services. That was like manna for me last week because I needed it. And I actually didn't call in to the Tone of Life because I wasn't in the mood to talk. But I knew I needed to connect. And just the fact that, like you said, David, we can have these conscious conversations and know that we're living it. This is not theory for any of us. And we all have something different to bring. We all have our own unique expressions, but the joy of feeling from South Africa to Korea to England to throughout the US, there's no boundary because we are meeting in a very sacred place. And I just feel so incredibly grateful. Grateful. So thank you for this morning. Really appreciate it.
I would
David. Oh.
Please go ahead.
It's it's been a huge invitation that has been extended to the Lord by you in the presence of his fellow ministers in the temple of light. The Lord has a home because we are here. And the Lord of the temple of light, joyously, I salute you in the temple of light, which is heaven on earth, even the temple of the Lord of the three plains, who stands before the Lord of lords as the high priest of the whole earth. This reality of being is likewise revealed within each one of you. For your heaven within you is your temple of light, wherein your spiritual consciousness is the priest of your temple before your Lord, who is your Father within you. These are the words that were spoken by the Spirit of Truth incarnate in Uganda in 1937. And it is so good to share that with all of you here, who are the fellow ministers in the temple of light. And in the remembrance of who it is that we are, and in the letting go of that which no longer needs to hold sway, we have the opportunity to be that light that clears that window, settles the underside of the sea of glass that we no longer project into, letting it return through us and through the intercession that you have provided, both you and Anne, as a heightened opportunity for us to be in attunement with that. And so it is fitting that the Lord would greet us as ministers in the temple of light, as priests of him before the Lord of Lords, because this is the reality of being, which we are saying yes to. This is the reality of being we are choosing to express. The ark being made real in consciousness, the ark being made real embodied. The Lord of the Sacred Three, the Lord of the Sacred Seven, and the full counsel that is available for that wisdom, for that radiance, for that tranquility, for the patience that we need to exercise as we let the Lord, so that we experience the love and we let it clear the fog of consciousness. It is a pleasure to share the time with all of you and to receive the opportunity to take his commission forward. Thank you, David. Thank you, Anne, and thank you all of you for what you provide to allow that space to be vibrantly real and alive, knowing that the Lord has a place to rest his head, but not only to rest his head, but to have his way, as has been the desire of his heart for us and through us. It's good to be with all of you.
I think I will turn it over to Steve if we're ready to do that. Is there anybody else who has something that they feel they'd like to say? Stuart?
Yes, David, I would love to speak in reply to the wonderful expression and words and time that you and Anne have shared with us. It's just been wonderful, and it's always wonderful to be able to spend time with you and Anne in this way. It has been a time of intensification, and as I believe you said, intensification or pressure is needed for something to be born. But I think the pressure is kind of beside the point, or not as important. The point is for something to be born. And so it's such a wonderful experience to be part of this group with these wonderful friends, some of whom I've known through the years and many others I don't. But it is something new happening, which I love being part of. And I'm finding that it requires a little humility, even as experienced as we may be and knowledgeable about spiritual things. This is a new moment, which requires a little humility to be present in the moment, to receive what is coming forth from heaven, and to allow that to be experienced by us and to move through us into the world, the invitation, so that there can be this new birth. So I'm excited to be with you as always, and thank you very much.
Thank you, David and Ann. And thank you, everyone. One senses that this pressure you spoke of, David, is the Lord's desire to be on earth. There's no separation. The lock is eternal. And let's just see what happens. Bless you all. Much love.
I recall that I mentioned that in the beginning, when the contractions happen, the pressure is, or what is occurring is often translated as pressure, but as we move along in the cycle, we recognize that there is actually a wonderful, joyful, ecstatic birthing process taking place, and it's coming through me. And this intensification is actually what I've gone through this whole cycle for. And isn't it glorious? Isn't it wonderful? And so what appears to be abnormal, and there may be some abnormal pressures in the birthing process now, given the state of the whole body of mankind of which we're a part, that's okay. But as we give ourselves into the cycle of that is initiated in a conception, an inception, and carried through to full term, and is released in birth and completion and wonder, and tended with great care after that, what has been brought forth. I think this is important right now to acknowledge that there's something to tend with care and understanding. This is the Lord's doing. This is the babe. This is the angel that has come forth into human form. Tend it, care for it, let it grow, let it develop. It's part of the coming forth of the body of the Lord on earth. That this reunion between heaven and earth, that which is separate from the consciousness of man, that has kept the Lord of Lords separate from his earthly home, and has kept us out of the heaven which is our heavenly home. So he has been without that which he needs, and we've been without that which we need. And they're coming together again. And these are sacred things. And it is a prayerful generation that we have moved in together. And so we tend these delicate, holy things with care in the generating chamber, and let the cycles in their perfection move. And I'll give it to you, Steve, with great thanks for you to complete our time in whatever way you feel is needed.
David, thank you. Thank you. And I can feel everyone's participation there. We're all in this together, and it's something to acknowledge that all together and to be at home with that. David, you mentioned pressures. You know, there's pressure to, as Barbara was saying, let go of what doesn't belong and to yield, actually relax into the pressure for the purification to take place. And I think we've all experienced some of that today. And let's continue in that way, unfolding what we've shared, letting our unified radiation continue to go out and let the changes occur in the greater earth that our capstone has provided. Our next Temple of Light service will be November 28th by Stuart. Stuart will be leading our time. We look forward to that. And Robert, do you have some music for us to gather in silence and listen?
Thank you, Robert.